Alright, so here's my new truck, a 95 F-150, possible 4.9 liter candidate. It's got some rough spots, but it was a cheap, easy buy. The title's clean and everything. It's got a 4-inch body lift, so it's going to take me a while to get used to looking at that. But the 4-wheel drive is all solid. It's got some big tires on it, which happen to rub right there on that radius arm. But the problems are right now, the shifter is loose. It's got that issue. The windshield wiper sprayer doesn't work. The door doesn't have any locks. It's got no mirror. These are leaking, which is going to rust out the roof. These cab lights up here, so that needs to be solved. And then the slip yoke is stuck, I think, so whenever you do a sick pull with all those juicy horsepowers, it decides to push the whole engine and transmission that way. So that's going to need to be solved, and I can show you here what I'm talking about. I gotta crawl down in this water. You can see the sick exhaust job here, but where is it? Sorry, I'm not used to this yet. You can see it's not moving in and out because there's rust there. So that's going to need to be solved. I don't know what exactly is happening there, but I'll figure it out. And yeah, the undercarriage is pretty clean. No major leaks except for a freaking gas leak. It's pretty intense actually. If you fill the tank up all the way, apparently it has a leak. But the dual tanks is gonna work. I just need a fuel pump for this tank. Just some casual wires that are not supposed to be, and then yeah, that's why my parking brake doesn't work. So that's actually really cool. Hopefully I can just hook that up. Yeah, underneath isn't that bad at all. I'm kind of surprised. It doesn't have too bad a rust. It's got one really bad spot. Like, look at how nice this side is. And then when we go over here, sorry for the hype. This thing's kind of loud. You get this. So, yeah, that's solid. And then somebody just, yeah, but we're just gonna ignore that. And the door somehow did the old 1-2. But it came with a toolbox, a cat, which I thought was full, but it's gutted, but whatever. Free tire, bunch of weird shit, some paint. You can get some paint in this rig, and yeah. So I'm gonna get started on the windshield wiper part. Alright, so the word on this is that I was able to find out that this motor out of this truck is not so good anymore. But just happens to be that even though they're like 10 years apart, they still use the same motor. So I took the motor out of this tank, which the connector was so brittle and old that it just broke off when I tried to pull it out by the connector. And I'm sure there's like a better way to do that, but basically I had to tear up this tank, even though it's not probably worth anything anyway. I figured I could probably use this for something, but not a big deal. So I got this motor and put it in and plugged it into there, and it worked. So the idea of mine that I have right now is to try to get this connector out, that plastic piece first, and just see if I can put it into here without breaking it. And if not, I'll just kind of glue it in there with some like really low strength glue, like some RTV or something. So getting that out was way too hard, but here's what the inside of this motor that was on the truck looks like. It's because there's a little hole in it right there, and that's where the water got in, screwed it up. But yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and glue the connector onto that. Should work out fine. Alright, so I cleared out the lines. I had to take off this hood cowl piece, and I put it back on, and now I'm gonna go ahead and get it all back together and hooked up. Alright, so the windshield wipers are working. Now I'm just going to kind of look around on the engine and make sure there's no vacuum leaks, and if there's not, then I'm going to check the timing. Alright, so the next few modifications I've done are beat this out. I got it pretty straight. obviously it's probably going to need to be sanded and like kind of put something on the back that's flat. Sorry, I just ate, but get that all flattened out. And then I went ahead and put a piece of wood right here on the door, and it bent it back by slamming it. And now the door gap, it closes real good whenever you actually shut it, but there's like stuff hanging right now. And I adjusted the door jamb, and then I put a new lock in it out of my old truck, which I forgot to take one of the doors up to the junkyard, so I still had one of the doors and the lock in it. And it turns out that if I wouldn't have had that, I would have had to order like probably a $20 part, which is a little arm in here, which you can't really see, but it was missing, so I'm glad that I kept that. And then on the other side, since I normally unlock it from the driver's side anyway, I'm just gonna get this thing got like sucked down into the door, so I'm gonna like pull that back out of the other door, or use the chrome one off of the old door, and then yeah, I'll have working locks. But for now, while he's working on that, I'm gonna go ahead and take this key tumbler, because right now you can do the old 1-2 without a key in it. So apparently, according to the internet, you just stick the key in there and then put it in some position. I think it's the on position, maybe. And then you stick something up this little hole, or there's like a little nub right, where is it? Right there, I think. And then it comes out. So I'm going to try that. Alright, so here's my setup here with the radius arm bushings. I got the locks fixed on the inside of the truck, and now you can see my sketchy old setup here pulling quite a few things in ways that they aren't really designed to be pulled. But ideally you would disconnect the spring. I actually just now noticed this, so yeah, I kind of forgot about that, but this is on a bushing. I don't really give a shit about those. Yeah, it's bending, whatever. That's probably why it's so hard to pull. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and slap the new one on there. And just so you know, I'm on a come along and a ratchet strap. And that ratchet strap is what's about to break. So I better get going. This is what happens when you have an M5OD and you don't change the transmission fluid barely at all. You end up with a bunch of metal. I'll show you the gear oil. I don't know if you can see all that shiny, but that's all metal shavings in the oil. And you can also see, I think this was transmission fluid, because that's brake clean in there, and it turned red. So I think that it's just black transmission fluid. So I might be wrong about that. I'm not a scientist. Alright, so I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see this, so I'm probably just going to go ahead and do it without recording much. But basically, I've got to take this tank out and replace it because it's rusty inside of there. And basically, there's a bolt right there, which you can see right there at the top of the light. That needs to come out, and that needs to come out. And then I don't know if you can see up there at the top of the light, there's a hose. That is the filler hose. That needs to come out. And then I can drop the tank. I should be able to leave that shit hooked up and then just drop it. So I'll get back to you once I get those bolts out and that hose off. Alright, and I got the tank all in there with the new fuel pump. Use the old straps. Just gotta put these little guys back on and I'll be done. Alright, so the fuel pump thing didn't work out. It turns out that the pump that I bought was already bad from the start, and it just kind of bit me for being cheap. And I ordered another cheap one, but from Amazon, because that's the quickest one that would come. Hopefully this one works. I'm not really sure. But basically what happened is I drove to the gas station, filled it up. It was leaking because the O-ring wasn't the right thickness. And then I switched it to the front tank, it popped the fuse. I switched the fuse, it popped that one. And then I switched it again, made it home. and found out that the motor is 0.2 ohms, which at 15 volts is trying to draw 75 amps, which is ridiculous. So it's basically a short circuit. But now I'm going to go ahead and move on while I'm waiting for the fuel pump to come. I went to the junkyard and got a bunch of things, so I'm getting ready to order the rest of the parts, and I want to make sure that I don't need to redo this side. So basically, you can see that that's not pressed in all the way. So the goal here is to heat it up red hot and then press it in with like a hammer. So I'm going to go ahead and try that. Alright, so I've been driving it for a few days now, and the throttle position sensor has given me a lot of trouble. I went and bought this one from Advanced Auto Parts, and it's bad. So I'm going to go ahead and wait. It's Thanksgiving now. I'm going to wait till tomorrow and then try to get one from Ford. It's kind of a big bullet to bite because it's like a couple percent of the actual spendings on the truck total. So kind of retarded, but I got the new brake self-adjuster kit put in it from Raybestos, and then I got a new parking cable from Raybestos, and it's looking pretty sexy. And the other side, my brakes stopped working, and it turns out that on the other side, the brake cylinder went out. So I ordered another one from Advanced Auto Parts. That'll be here soon. It was only 10 bucks. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this side, slap that parking cable on the rest of the way, and then throw it back together. Alright, so I got the parking brake cables installed nice and cleanly, and now I'm going to go ahead and move on to changing the gear oil while I'm waiting for for tomorrow to get the throttle position sensor and the drum brake cylinder. So basically, this truck has a problem with the spare tire setup here, and the problem is that you can't get it out with any kind of tools that you would have with you in the spare tire change kit. So I'm going to need to find out a way to make my own tools, because I'm not really sure what this truck came with in order to do this, because normally they come with this and then a jack, and then it's like a piece that goes in the front, looks like this, to crank the jack, and that's fine and all, but I'll show you down here what the actual drive looks like to get the spare tire down. So you can see right here that there's basically this little piece right here, and you stick, I'm assuming this is how it works, you stick like a tire iron in there, but you can see that this hitch receiver is in the way, so that's not going to work. And I'm kind of confused about the bolt that's in here, because I know somebody put it in there, because it obviously doesn't look factory, but I'm just curious as to what went in there in the first place, because I know you're supposed to basically lift this up, and then you're supposed to turn this, because this is the nut that's attached to the chassis up there. So I think my best bet is to get that to work, because it'd be easier to do this right here at the edge of the truck than it would be to go over here and turn this drive, which is a 1/2 inch drive, so I just need a 1/2 inch socket wrench, but I gotta weld that nut, and it's next to all those lines and stuff, so I'd rather just get this working right here in order to get this thing to work. Okay, so the verdict here is that these clutches actually look, I'm not an expert, but they look pretty new. Like, they look like they've got a lot of thickness. I don't know if I'm looking at the right thing there, but according to, if that's the clutch, that looks like quite a bit of thickness to me, which would explain why it works so good. That's the good. And the bad, can you see that? Not so good. So there's been water in here, and that's why it's got that porosity. But it looks like it's not really that big of a concern to me. I mean, it's probably going to wear out the pinion, but the pinion looks relatively new. The contact patch is not spread across the whole gear yet. Don't get me wrong, it's kind of spread across a lot of the gear, but it's looking pretty good for this rear end and its longevity. The gears mesh really nice. There's not a lot of slop at all. That's right there, that's just the slop in the axle. And you can see most of these teeth are pretty good, but there are spots where water have been sitting in it. Like, look at the back side of that. So, not the best, not the most ideal thing, but I'm just going to go ahead and clean it out like I have done in one of my previous videos, and then let this sit and then show you all the metal in the bottom. Alright, so I did my best to pick all the metal out of that pan just by dragging it out, and there's this little pile of metal, metallic right here, but that's about it, so it's not that bad. My theory as to why those gears are rusted is because this guy broke off and is hanging. And I bought this from a place near a lake, or actually the guy lived at a lake, so if he was backing this down the boat ramp, then that's how it got the water in it, and then every time he let it sit, then the moisture in there with the gear facing up towards oxygen was able to rust. But not too bad. I think that'll last me quite a while, honestly, especially the conditions the clutches are in. I could still somewhat see through the gear oil, so I'm pretty happy about that. Okay, so I'm back here again, and I guess where the guy messed up before whenever he was doing this was, I didn't know this because this is my first time doing this, just so you know. Basically, this is like a collar, and it can move up and down. I was wondering why there's a slot over here, and you can see that that slot is really small right now. And you can see how there's not any space in between this surface and that surface. Now if we go over here to a side that's been somewhat properly done, probably by the manufacturer to be honest, you can see there's a gap here. So the problem I'm running into is that I'm stupid and I'm tightening the freaking top one first to hold it up in there, which is really a pain in the ass, by the way, and then this happens. This is the first time I just realized what I'm doing wrong. I'm about to fix it, but you can see that it's on the snap ring there. So I'm going to go ahead and take this back out, and then I'm going to press that back in, and this time I'll videotape it and so you can see this thing in action. Alright, and still to this point I still haven't looked up any directions or anything, but I got that one tight, and then this sleeve is out, which you can see actually I might have been wrong about that. The previous person screwed this up because they put anti-seize on it, so they must have been doing something right, but you can see the boots on these cheap ball joints just don't seem to protect it very well because it kind of like squishes out. So that's my only bad comments on the $3.99 ball joints. But basically I'm going to go ahead and cinch this down. You're going to want to make sure there's supposed to be a piece of metal right here, so it's like a notch, but someone broke it off, must have hammered it down on there when it wasn't lined up. But basically when that goes down on the taper of the ball joint, that's going to push out and then expand and then become one with the I-beam here. So yeah, that's how that works.